We have Pastor Dwayne Hoven, former pastor of First English Lutheran here in town, who is retired now in Rochester with his lovely wife Ann. And this is a videotape for the Rice County Historical Society. And we have Julie Fox of Fox Video Productions, who's doing the taping. And the temperature is 70 degrees and it's sunny.
Well, Roy, it's good to be with you today. You know, before this was ever put together, I was thinking it would be fun to sit down with you and talk a little bit about your years. I've known you for about 40 years now. And so we're going to press a little bit. Let me start out by saying, what are some of your childhood memories? And also people that were influential in your life that kind of, when you look back, helped shape the Roy Anderson that we've got around Faribault these days.
Well, I'm going to talk about my life as a river, a metaphor of a river. So the headwaters would be in Mankato, where I was born and raised. And we lived with my grandparents for the first few years, so I became quite close with Otto and Etta Anderson. And we had a neighbor, Ole, across the street, and we would get together and play cards a lot. And we had a lot of kids in our neighborhood, and there was a big slough just a block away with a nice hill for sliding, and we would use that a lot too. And I had an Aunt Mabel Wheeler that was my favorite aunt, and she was a terrific person and guide.
Okay. What did your dad do?
My dad was a yeast salesman in the early days, and then he went into the service station business, had a Shell station across from the Burton Hotel. So my brother Roger and I got to work in the station.
And you just had the one brother, right?
Yes, I have no sisters, the one brother Roger.
Okay. What did you and Roger do for fun? What were the fun things you did as a kid?
Well, we played a lot of sandlot football and softball, and we kept a record one year, and we played football every month of the year. And
all winter included, huh?
Yes, all winter too. So that was a big part of it. And as I say, we had a lot of friends in the neighborhood there, our own age.
When you think back, was your childhood and growing up years a very positive experience?
I would say it was very positive. We were not wealthy, but we weren't poor. But we had a lot of friends and a lot of relatives in the area too, so we had a lot of family reunions.
Uh-huh.
And that's kind of like the tributaries of a river coming in and
Sure.
contributing.
Sure. How about your high school and years shortly after high school? What were some of the things that stand out in your memory?
Well, I enjoyed wrestling. I was on the first wrestling team that Mankato High ever had, and I got to wrestle a regional tournament on one occasion in St. Cloud, and my opponent banged his head into me, and I woke up and I was looking at the ceiling. It was the shortest match of the day.
I take it you didn't win.
No, I didn't win. I was pinned. And I helped out narrating football games, and worked a lot at the dad's gas station, so that took a lot of time. And
In your early years, was that something that shaped your interest in nature and the outdoors? Or when did that enter into your life?
well, I would say in my early life there, we were by this large slough that had a stream running through it, and I spent a lot of time all through the year interacting with that environment.
Uh-huh.
And it was really pristine too. There was a lot of wildlife, wildflowers,
Okay.
and so on. So that was,
And early in your years, you took a jaunt to Alaska, right?
yes. Before that, I had an interest in going to Europe when I was at the University of Minnesota, and I asked a couple fellows to go, and they were going to go, but then they dropped out, and I decided, well, I belong to the American Youth Hostels, and I'll go over there myself. So just like you took a trip to Europe, I know too. So I hitchhiked through Holland, Denmark, Norway, Sweden, Germany, France, Switzerland, and stayed in youth hostels, which might be on a ship, or it could be on a windmill, or a large building along the Rhine River, and got to meet some real interesting people. I don't recommend hitchhiking in these days. I think it'd be dangerous. In those days, there were girls traveling in pairs that had no trouble hitchhiking through Europe. And in the evening, we would have talks with these students from all over the world, not just Europe, but Australia, New Zealand, and so on. And I would have to defend America's actions, and that was a real challenge to answer the questions that those kids
So
had.
but you were talking about early 1950s you were
This
there?
was 1954.
So defend in terms of what, our foreign policies?
Yeah,
and-
our foreign policies and
Uh-huh.
that kind of thing. And
So were you traveling most of the time on your own or with?
most of the time on my own, but I did meet a Danish fellow and a French fellow who traveled with me quite a bit of the time too. And it was very interesting summer.
You've always had such a global perspective, and that probably, initiated some of that perspective for you during that trip to, because you were what, you said 20 or so, early 20s?
When I went to Europe,
Yeah?
yeah, that was in the early 20s,
Uh-huh.
1954. And I had joined the National Guard when I was a junior in high school, and attended drill and summer camp at Camp Ripley in northern Minnesota. And then December 1950, I was listening to the radio in my bunk on Charlotte Street in Mankato, and the following message came over the air. The Mississippi National Guard and the Minnesota National Guard divisions will be federalized for service in the Korean War. And so I was in college at that time thinking of chemistry, and the next week I was in the Army. And we started to drill in the Mankato area, and then we boarded a train and went to Camp Rucker, Alabama. And it was a real leadership experience, because I was asked to teach first aid and sanitation to the troops. So we'd have classrooms right out in the field, and it was a wonderful experience. And then I got selected to be in the first contingent of the 47th Viking Division to go to Korea. And so on one particular Saturday they had a parade, and that was really a thrill to have close to 10,000 men give you eyes right, as they pass the reviewing stand. So I had been in the medical unit in Mankato, and then in Korea I was assigned to a clearing company platoon. It was a self-contained medical unit. We had our own water supply, electric generator. We had a clinic, a little hospital tent, and we had a dental chair. But God help you if you needed dental care, because every so often electric shock would go through that drill.
Not too comfortable for the patient?
Not too comfortable. But I was 19 and 20 years old, and I was a platoon sergeant, and I had men in my unit that were twice as old as I was. So that was a challenge to be able to handle that situation, you know, and then have several officers above me too. And
So some real leadership experiences grew out of your military time.
yes, and I was picked with a number of other men from the division to go to Japan for a secret assignment. So we were in Tokyo, and then we were taken to a state outside of Tokyo, and they were interviewing us for positions as cadre. Cadre means the basic leadership for a new outfit, and they wanted people to train the Japanese army secretly. And so there was a bus full of us, and they were interviewing, you know, all afternoon. And finally, there were just two of us left. And they called us forward, and they said, "Fellows, we have some bad news for you. You have not had regular Army training, and we require that for these positions." And so my lack of training there meant that I had to go back to Korea. And I said to myself, I'll never be in a situation like this where I don't have adequate training. So that helped propel me on to, you know, continue college after the service.
And the training, what was the training they were looking for? That military training
yes.
as such?
Yeah, they had like a special Army first aid training in Texas. And I was scheduled to go to that. But before I could go, I was sent overseas.
Okay.
So they required, I had training in the Guard, but it wasn't, you know, up to what they required.
Sure. Otherwise, the Korean experience, other things that happened in there that are worth remembering?
Well, it was United Nations force, and I would hitchhike, you know, and visit. I had other friends from Mankato that were in Korea too, and you'd get a ride with a New Zealand guy driving a truck, and the next thing you'd be some Turkish fellow would give you a ride, and so it was really quite an experience that way. And we were about 8 miles behind the lines, and we sent patients to the MASH hospital behind us, which was a Swedish hospital. And we had ambulances and helicopters to evacuate.
Now, had you had interest in medical things prior to your military time?
I was really kind of oriented towards chemistry initially, but then in the service I met an optometrist, and we had some long discussions, and I had required eye care since I was 10 years old, so optometry seemed to be a pretty good fit that way. And I had the GI Bill then to continue pre-optometry at the university.
Okay.
And then I was awarded a scholarship to Pennsylvania College of Optometry in Philadelphia. It's a 4-year course. Optometry is the art and science of vision care. And little did I know that across the street from the college were 3 young women.
You didn't know that, you sure?
And they were nurses, and Bobby worked in an insurance company, and they had spaghetti on Sunday nights, and it turned out to be a tender trap.
Oh my goodness.
And so
That was the start of
that was the
a
start.
romance.
Right. So I graduated in June 3rd, 1958, and we drove across Pennsylvania and got married on the 5th, so it was a pretty busy couple of days.
Let's pick up a little bit. Was this Alaska experience during your training years? That you...
Yes, that was 1956. That was 2 years after being in Europe.
Now, you wrote up a little bit about that experience in
Yes,
Alaska, didn't you?
I did write a little book about that, and it was fun. There were 2 classmates, and I decided to work in Alaska. we didn't really have any connections or anything there, but we just felt that we'd find work. And Al is Jewish, and Don is Eastern Catholic, and I'm Lutheran, so we had some interesting discussions in that area. And we took my car and to my dad's station there in Mankato, and we had overhauled and put rubber under the gas tank and so on, and got ready for the Alaska Highway. And so we worked in the gold mines in Alaska with Eskimos, and our main job was taking care of water pipelines. We were thawing out the ground. We had these steel rods, and the water was flowing through them, and we'd just work those down into the ground. Then we could shut off the water to add sections. And then there was a dredge that would float on this man-made pond and pick up the gravel, which passed over mats with mercury. Mm-hmm. And the mercury just takes the gold right out of the gravel, forms what's called an amalgam. And then that's taken into the Fairbanks where it was smelted. They'd separate the gold and the mercury. And once a week we would empty those mats that had the amalgam in it. So the company officers were all watching us because nuggets would come through every now and then. That was all company property.
You didn't go home rich from that.
No, but it was an experience. 7 days a week, 9 hours a day we worked. Then we left there. We worked on Highway 101 in California on road construction, and finished up the summer as migrant workers in the peach orchards in the San Joaquin Valley. And so, like you say, we didn't earn a lot of money, but we had a wealth of experiences.
Well, just to retrack here, you grew up in Mankato, and you continued your education. You had an experience in Europe. You were in the military in Korea, and you had a touch of Japan. You did an Alaska stretch of work, and you were out in Pennsylvania for your professional training, and there you met Bobby. What other pieces should we work into this interview up till the time you started practicing your profession?
Well, I had a neat experience when I was a junior in optometry school, working at Shaw Air Force Base in South Carolina. An optometrist friend of mine was in the Air Force, and he invited me to come down. And here I was just a junior student, and I was examining lieutenants and colonels and whatever. He supervised it, and then he kind of let me go on my own after a few days. So that was a real neat experience, and I was especially happy to be invited into the homes out there in the East, because I had come the furthest distance to attend college, and a Jewish person would invite me to New Jersey, somebody else would invite me to go deer hunting in New York, and they were very, very friendly people. And I lived in a home of Dr. John and Ethel Crozier, and he was a pioneer in optometry. Mm-hmm. And really helped to start the profession. And so I was actually employed by Dr. Crozier. He had 2 sons that were optometrists. And so I learned some opticianry there from him. And they had a big home and had several optometry students in that home. And we've gone back and kind of driven through the area.
Let's also pull in. You spoke about looking at your years in that metaphor of rivers. Pick up on that a little bit and bring me a little bit more up on that one.
Well, rivers have been a very important part of my life. Even in high school, I would canoe with friends on the Minnesota River, and then my brother and I would go to the Boundary Waters and camp and canoe there for days at a time. And so rivers were kind of there from early on. And then later on, I was married. We shared a canoe with neighbors across the street, the Clarys, John and Jean Clary. And so then we got into a lot of canoeing with you and
Sure.
John, Crow Wing River and Boundary Waters. And
So really the name River Roy almost goes back into your younger years too, as well as your adult years.
right, yeah, that's true. And so I purchased the practice of Dr. Don Chatham. He called himself a blue-bellied Yankee. He had come from Buffalo, New York in 1905. And that's when optometry really started in Minnesota. And the location was in the 4th floor of the Security Bank building. And my rent was $45 a month for 3 rooms. And I was there until 1972, practicing examination of the eye and refraction, contact lenses, and then the optical needs too. And then in 72 I moved to the Brunswick building, and Bobby helped me design that. And she did a lot of work in the office, bookkeeping, and later on helping people select classes and that sort of thing. And so I never owned a building, but always rented.
So where did you find that there was an opening here in Faribault, from way out in Pennsylvania?
Well, at that time we were based in Mankato. We were living with my parents.
After you'd graduated?
Yes, after I graduated. So we were contacted Minnesota Optometric Association, and they gave us some leads. They looked into Ortonville and Winona and Faribault. And at that time, my dad had gotten into a new business. He and my mother built the Anderson's Mobile Home Park, and so we moved over there then when I started in 1958.
Okay, and that was in Mankato?
No, that was in Faribault.
The Faribault, okay.
Yeah. When we graduated, we were in Mankato just a few weeks and took the state board examinations, and then in the fall moved over here.
So did you have a desire to begin your practice in Minnesota?
Yeah, I did. Bobby would have liked me to be in Pennsylvania, but I prevailed, and so we ended up in Faribault, and it's really a very fine city with good government, and good police, and fine library I use a lot, and just wonderful clubs, and the nature center. Last night I was on a summer solstice hike.
We'll have to get into that. Tell me though a little about the profession. Did optometry change a lot during the years you actually practiced for what, 33
years.
33. What differences did you note in the practice of your profession?
Well, just prior to my going in, optometry kind of had come out of jewelry stores. Jewelers,
Really?
yes,
Didn't know that.
Dr. John Schoen at Owatonna is the son of a jeweler. And they would be at the pretty primitive methods of examination. And when I graduated in 58, optometry through the nation was involved with refraction, determining, optical errors like nearsightedness and farsightedness, and the detection of eye disease, but not the treatment. But in those 33 years, optometry worked into diagnostic drugs as well as treatment of eye disease. So optometry really morphed quite a bit in those years. And in every state in the union now, optometrists do treat eye disease.
Did that require continuing education, professional education for you?
Yes, we were almost from the time I started in practice, we had around 15 hours of postgraduate education. They would require a given course was mandatory, and other courses were at your own selection. I got to attend the University of Indiana for contact lens course once, and some other ones back in Pennsylvania at Optometry College.
Now, were there several others practicing in Faribault when you came?
Yeah, there were 3 others practicing. In those days, the practices tended to be independent. For example, I had my own practice, and I didn't have anybody with me, any other optometrist, till when I was close to retirement. But nowadays, the 3 O's tend to be in the same clinic. By that I mean, like here in Faribault, the Crossroads Clinic, we have Dr. Ritchie, who's an ophthalmologist and surgeon. We have 3 optometrists that work in the clinic, and several opticians. And those are the 3 O's in the field of eye care. And that actually brings out, I think, the best, most efficient vision care when you have those 3 working together.
So you were really more in the pioneering years in the field.
Yeah, as I look back, it was pioneering years in many ways.
Would you have liked to have been around long enough to have gotten into this type of group practice?
I would have liked that, but it just didn't fit my situation.
Related to your profession, I was always impressed, Roy, when, I don't know when that started, but I recall you going to Mexico with other professional colleagues, and that you would take eyeglasses along and you would work with people there, and you did that in other places too. Tell me a little about that, and because that I thought was a significant effort that you did.
Well, it started in 1980 when Bobby and I attended an eye clinic in Parral, Chihuahua, Mexico. That's where the Chihuahua dogs come from.
Okay.
And the organization it's called VOSH, stands for Volunteer Optometric Service to Humanity, and that had started in the 1970s in the state of Kansas. And now about 2/3 of the states have chapters of VOSH. And like Minnesota, VOSH sends out about 3 missions a year. And we would collect used eyeglasses and then have workshops where we would clean them and catalog them. We have an instrument we can determine the exact prescription. We put that on an envelope with the glasses in it, and then they're all arranged in power. So when we would get to our destination, the clinic could be up and running in 20 minutes. And I remember the first morning that we went to work, there was a Mexican cowboy sitting inside the front door with the biggest revolver that I've ever seen. And he was guarding that equipment, and because that was important to those people to get this eye care. And there was over 100 people, at 8 o'clock in the
Just
morning,
waiting for your,
just waiting
to see you.
to be seen. And there was one farmer that told me he couldn't tell the difference between a horse and a cow. And it turns out that he was nearsighted, myopia is a technical term, to the extent that he couldn't see anything beyond 2 inches from his eyes. And so luckily we were able to get a prescription that was not exactly what he needed, but close. And they were thick like the bottom of a Coke bottle. And he cried when he got those glasses, because he was, an adult and he'd never seen. And there was a lot of pathology, and we worked with a Mexican ophthalmologist, and so when we found cataract patients or other diseases, we would refer them to his clinic. And so that was fun getting to know.
It must have been almost miraculous for these people to all of a sudden have a pair of glasses put on so they could see.
Well, old ladies would come in with a sewing kit, you know, with some material and a needle and thread. They'd put their glasses on, and you know, they'd just look up. And Bobby worked in the area of the selecting the eyeglasses, and so she would find out, you know, what would fit the best and look the best.
So Bobby was a part of that work.
Oh yeah,
regularly,
she
too.
went on 10 missions and I went on 12. And we served in, let's see, 10 times in Mexico, 2 destinations, once in Dominican Republic and then once in India. And in India we worked in tents, right on the Arabian Nights. There was a Mr. Mangalik from Agra, India, who had moved here, and he was a successful businessman. And he said, he and his wife said that we are going to build a hospital in Agra, India, that will serve patients 7 days a week, 24 hours a day with specialists. Right. And he did that. Right. And we were invited as kind of the first team. They were just starting to build the hospital there. They just had a couple little buildings. And in those missions, we started out using trial frames, these are called. And these are just little lenses that fit in there. All this is a piece of cardboard with a hole in it. With that device, you can tell the vision that a patient is capable of.
As they look through this?
Yes. And so, you know, you don't need $1 million machine necessarily to learn some pretty important things about vision.
And probably most of the people you were seeing probably had never had an eye exam.
That's
right?
right, that's right.
Or a pair of glasses.
Yeah, they had never had them. Or if they did, they were probably broken, you know,
Sure.
and had them a long time. But later on, we got automatic refractors where you just have the patient look in an instrument and it gives you a reading of the prescription. So
sure.
that became, we could see a lot more patients, because this was quite time consuming to
Right.
put 3 lenses in each side here, and
Yes, yes.
so.
And now a lot of that, your travel and all was, a lot of those expenses you and Bobby had to cover, that was your gift
Yes.
to
yeah.
those people, right?
Yeah, it was. But the people in Faribault here and, well, throughout the country, very supportive of Foch. And they were so good about contributing, you know, glasses and cash, and you know, and I would come back and Bobby and I would be on the radio. We'd be talking about our experiences. A lot of times we had Faribault people with us, and that we would train to do different things, and so it was a wonderful experience.
And I can well imagine that as you came back and were telling the story in Faribault, that certainly opened up the world for a lot of people here in Faribault to realize what you were doing and what needs were in other countries too.
Yeah, that's very true. We had medical doctors that went with us sometimes, and we had dentists and nurses, and a lot of lay people that we would train for
Sure.
little technical duties, you know, in the clinic. They'd often on the airplane flying to Mexico, we'd give them a short course on you know, how to read a prescription.
Right. I saw you had a very rich professional life, and you shared that far beyond the boundaries of the community of Faribault through the years too. Anything else that we ought to cover in terms of the professional side of life here? Otherwise, I'm going to move us into a new topic.
Well, I'm going to turn about here, and I'm going to say that experience for us was a lot like your experience in Papua New Guinea. And, you know, going to a third world country, and I think Anne became ill as a result of that.
For a while, sure, yeah.
And it, you know,
But those are growing experiences. They certainly expand our world, and I'm sure your kids and all benefited richly by that, Roy.
And it makes you appreciate the USA with, you know, clean water and electricity and good government and honest police, and I think about that every day. We got so much to
A lot to be
be
thankful for.
thankful.
Well, back to rivers, I think one of my first connections with you and the out of doors had to do with the Cannon River and the Straight River and your interest in them. And I know that I've read your book. You've done a lot of canoeing around this area and a lot of interest in the rivers around here. Let's shift gears and talk a little about that side of your life. How did you get started in that interest in doing something on the not so straight river?
Well, a lot of it, I think after we talk about the rivers, we'll probably take a break.
Okay.
Anyway, I got started in scouting quite early on in our marriage as our boys got into cubbing. Bobby was a den mother, and a good part of that involved camping, canoeing the Zumbro and the Cannon and the Strait, and going to the Boundary Waters. And I did, a quarter of a century later, receive a Silver Beaver Award for scouting, which I was
A very distinguished award in scouting.
proud of. And so that's kind of how, and then as I say, the neighbors and I had this Grumman canoe we bought, and I don't know if you know, but Uncle Ben's Rice had quite a bit to do with the canoeing becoming a big thing after World War II, because they had a special where you could send in so many coupon boxes from Ben's Rice, and
Didn't know that.
I don't know, $75, you could get a canoe.
Really?
And Grumman had been making aircraft during World War II, and making tanks, cylindrical tanks, was a lot like building a canoe. So they just used a lot of the aluminum they had over and developed the aluminum canoe, which is considered old-fashioned now, but it had its place in the canoeing circles.
Yeah, right.
And then I got involved with the Cannon River Watershed Partnership, which is a conservation group that tends to work with all of these agencies that are affected by, that work with or in some way related to rivers, like the Fish and Wildlife, DNR, and Soil and Water Conservation District and all of that. So it's kind of a unique organization around the country that looks out for the health of the rivers and looks to make fish edible and have clean enough for swimming are two of the guidelines for the Cannon River Watershed Partnership, which is based out of a farm home owned by St. Olaf College.
Okay. That book you did, what was the title again of your?
The Saga of the Not So Straight River, and I started in 1994 with the research, and I'm kind of a social guy, and I really enjoy going out interviewing people who touch the river in some way, maybe recreation or ice skating, setting up like in Owatonna, they had the ice skating rink was formed by the Straight River.
Okay.
And there was a man there that kind of was a river man. His whole life revolved around the river. But anyway, when it came time to use the computer down in the basement, I wasn't so good about that, and Bobby finally said, you got to get down there and get at that. So finally in '97 I had it published, and the Steele County Historical Society was good enough to do that, and and people really look up to you when you're a published author. They seem to hold you on a higher plane, and I would always tell people that I think every person has a book in them. They have some interest or passion, and all they need to do is take a 3x5 card, carry it with them, and they find out something about that topic, write it down, throw it in a drawer, a year or two later, the book is in the drawer and all you have to do is organize it. So I really encourage people to write a book or a poem or a play or whatever. And so we've sold about 1,000 books so far.
That's
so I think
amazing. That's
pretty
a lot
good.
of them.
And but I was a novice writer, so I made some mistakes, and if I do it again, I'd do it a little differently.
You know, Roy, you and I have traveled with our spouses many, many miles. And one thing I've always been amazed at is that we'll cross, it seems to me, the most insignificant stream, and you seem to know where that stream has come from, where its source would be. You are so knowledgeable about nature and rivers in particular. Seems the water, I think that picking that metaphor of kind of water and its movement certainly reflects a lot about your life and your interests.
Well, along those lines, our family had so many good times with your family visiting the national parks, mostly in the West, and also Isle Royal, sailing in Lake Superior, and
Right.
our families really had a lot of great experiences, and we seldom missed a ranger talk or a ranger hike, and the ranger might say, well, don't feed the animals, feed the rangers.
What I recall is you are such a social being. It seemed to me everywhere we stopped to get gas at a gas station, wherever, you always engaged people in conversation, and you knew more about them before we left that gas station than somebody who lived beside them for the last 20 years.
Well,
I don't have that knack, but
Well,
you
do
enjoyed
have-
doing it.
You do have a knack of knowing when an ice cream cone would be a nice fit on a
There
hot
you-
afternoon in the plains of Montana.
There you do it.
And Ann has a special gift in giving a restaurant a 20-second view and determining whether it's clean and a good place to eat.
There's all kinds of talents needed in this world. We should say just a bit about the family too. You and Bobby obviously met back in that moment, way back in your graduate school, and then you and Bobby have had 3 sons. Maybe we should just take a few minutes and just kind of give us a little whatever you'd like to on your family, Roy.
Okay, well, our oldest son, Eric, is in West Bend, Wisconsin, near Milwaukee. He's a mechanical engineer. And his wife, Becky, is former Nichols girl from town. And they have 2 children, Brant and Alyssa. And Brant is self-employed in the landscaping business. Alyssa just graduated from high school. And then David graduated as aerospace engineer, and then he morphed into database work. So he's a database administrator now. And he married Jody, a lady with 3 daughters. Jamie's in California and married to Rich, and they have Josie, who would be our great-granddaughter, only great-grandchild we have. And Shelley's in Connecticut in banking, and Whitney, the 3rd girl, is in retail in Chaska. And so Dave and Jody then had 2 sons of their own. Parker is 12 and Alex is 9, and they live in Chaska. And so that's rounds out the family. And then my brother married Marilyn Carlson, and she was trained in physical therapy and helped children with special needs in Eau Claire, Wisconsin. And Roger is a doctor of education and worked for the University of Wisconsin at Eau Claire for many years. And they've retired at Webb Lake near Danbury in northwestern Wisconsin, and have a lovely home which morphed from a small cabin to a year-round
I
home.
think you remember that small cabin a bit.
Yes, I remember you.
And your Steve in California, I know, is a great hiker. He's taken on a little of your love of the outdoors, and he and our son John have done a little hiking around that beautiful John Muir Trail.
Yes.
And I was going to also say, Rob, I've been so impressed of how you and Bobby, the care that you gave to your parents and to Bobby's mom. I think there was something that was beautiful about that ought to be affirmed anyway. I just really was impressed by that. And the hospitality that you and Bobby always seem to, your home has always been a welcoming place. Just say a little bit, you've had some global visitors that have stayed with you for a while too, haven't you, without spending a lot of
Yes.
time on that? You've had
Well,
some from...
I was a member of the Rotary Club here in Faribault for almost 40 years, and it's a very fine service club. And there was a lot of exchange programs in Rotary, and so we had guests from a couple times from India, Australia, and Germany, and Argentina, and I could go on and on. But we really learned a lot having those people in our home. And to this day, we get communications from a Japanese girl who was a student here at Mankato High, Satsuki, and she's come back several occasions for high school reunions, and
Sure.
it's been fun to follow her career. And then we did help raise 2 girls. We had our 3 sons, but it was fun to have to raise girls. We had Melissa Haney was here for 4 years. She had some problems at home, and so we took her in. And then Renee Kim from Faribault needed a secure home, and she was with us about the same time. And she's in the U.S. Air Force and married, and she's going to have a baby about any time.
Is that right?
And so that's really rounded out our life.
That has been an impressive thing. Education has always been important. We've attended several elder hostels, as we've noted through the years together. But I've noticed these last few years you've been in a different form of education. We need to talk about your role as Grandpa Roy in the school system here in Faribault. Tell us a little how you got into that talented business.
Well, it's a program that started way back in President Johnson's times, and in the war on poverty, and people like 55 and over volunteered for this work, and we work in many different areas. For example, I'm in the 4th grade of an elementary school with Mrs. Greaser, fine teacher. We have other people in Faribault that work in child care, and around the state there's people, the reformatory, there's people in charter schools and all sorts of settings. And we do get a small stipend, which is so small it's not even taxable. And I've been doing it for 6 years, and my school, Roosevelt Elementary School, has over 600 students. It's a half-a-mile walk over there. And so I have this stick which is made out of cactus. It's a saguaro cactus. And in the winter time, I flip this over, and then I have a carbide steel tip on there, which is quite effective for
Your ice.
walking on ice, because I do have hills. And then I've got Minnesota Scotch Light here so they can see me in the dark.
I have never seen that. Is that your own design on the bottom with the ice gripper for the winter time?
Well, that's available in medical supply
Is it?
places.
How neat.
And as I go, I think back of the hiking and camping over the years, and one of my favorite songs was The Happy Wanderer, which is a Swiss mountaineering song. And a few bars of it goes like this. I love to go a-wandering along the mountain track, and as I go I love to sing my knapsack on my back. Val-de-ree, Val-de-rye, it goes on like that.
Very good.
And I have to read this, the second stanza is really appropriate. I love to wander by the stream that dances in the sun. So joyously it calls to me, come join my happy song.
What are some of the things that you enjoy doing with the kids? I think you have a Grandpa Roy moment or so once a week or something?
Yes,
What do you do
not
for those?
that often. Well, it's a little drama that I thought up wherein I have a construction paper and like a fake fire ring and some paper logs, and I have a wig made out of a mop and the big nose I put on, and the girls like to put a little mustache on me. And I might talk about volunteering overseas, or I'm in a DNA study by the National Geographic Society, just rivers. Teacher lets me talk on any subject I want, and we turn the lights out and put a little candle or electric lantern under that, and it's kind of a nice setting, and the kids gather around, and then I wear my my bone pen, and the little kids ask what that is.
I recall when you had a little few moments when you spent at St. Mary's Hospital in Rochester, your wall was plastered with cards that the kids from the school had sent, "Get well, Grandpa Roy."
Yeah, I've got a lot of those. Some of my duties at the school involve being assigned to 3 students to focus on through the year. Generally, it's in reading and math. And the lesson is going on, I'll just move in right next to that student, and I'll just be right by them as the teacher is lecturing. And the kids miss school, and I give tests, and I correct tests, and I do some copying. I can make booklets up, and just have all sorts of duties. I have an early lunch, and then kids that didn't get their work done, I can help them after I return. And I go on field trips.
On some trips, have you?
Yeah, I've gone on several field trips to Rochester. We go to the Mayo High School Astronomy Center. It's very interesting. And the same afternoon, we go to your art center there right downtown.
Sure.
So it's science in the morning and art in the afternoon. And we go to the Minnesota Zoo. And one year I had 3 girls I was chaperoning there, and these girls had money, as much as $20. And all they want to do is shop. And we buy some items at this shop, and then we go to this other shop here, and they decided they wanted to take back the items they got at the first shop. And that went on most of the day, and then we got to the 3D movie. And then the girl said, "Grandpa Roy, there's popcorn available here, and we don't have any money." So I had to come through. But I've been to an archery center at Chatfield, Minnesota. We went to a water park in Owatonna. Just a lot of experiences that way.
It seems to me, Roy, that's so typical of your life, that you've made so many opportunities available for other people, learning opportunities, but at the same time you've always enriched your own life by those experiences, which is such a neat exchange to have there. Also wanted to say, is there any, we should ask here, are there just a couple, 2, 3 examples of major changes that you've observed in Faribault over your many years here? I think they were hopeful we'd get a little comment about that in here.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. Because in this videotaping series, Sue Garwood, the executive director, wants us to touch on how Faribault in business has changed. And Faribault when I came to town, didn't have any malls at all. And then in the 60s, we had the mall, original mall by Lyndale Avenue there, with a Gamble's store called Tempo in there, was the anchor store. And then later on, we got the West Mall with J.C. Penney and big food market, and then Walmart came in, and that has been like so successful that it just enlarged 2 years ago. So it's quite a large mall now. And as a result of that, we have a lot of more specialty shops like downtown Central Avenue, catering to special interests, whereas when we moved to town, there were small grocery stores and stationery stores and that kind of thing. So the business side has morphed
Sure.
quite a bit in that direction. I know we took a walk through it last year, and you know, the town is growing in size as the next more property, and we have 10 lakes within 10 miles of here, so there's a lot of people, you know, living year-round on the lakes, commuting to town or wherever. And just finished Heritage Fest this past week, and some real interesting experiences there. We had a service at the Episcopal Cathedral Sunday with the Over and Back bluegrass band.
Okay.
Your son John would have enjoyed that service. It was really a uplifting service that was really enjoyed there.
You sound like you're still a promoter for the community, and you always have been. Roy, I wanted to ask you, as we bring this to a close, is there anything you would really hope that we would include in this interview that we haven't touched on yet that you'd like to just mention?
Well, just a couple of things. I tell my students, I've been telling them my life story. I talk to 300 students in various classes. As I talk about the value of incorporating 3 words in their life, and those are God. Belief in God is important as an anchor through life. We've so enjoyed our membership in First English Lutheran Church, where you were a pastor for many years. Wonderful sermons, music, and so on. The second thing would be love, the importance of love in our relationships. And also the third thing would be friendship. God, love, and friendship are 3 key words, I think, for life. And I do have a little quotation here that I want to read. It's part of a poem by Robert Louis Stevenson. And there's some water involved in this too.
All right, that's fitting.
Go, little book, and wish to all flowers in the garden, meat in the hall, a bin of wine, a spice of wit, a house with lawns enclosing it, a living river by the door, a nightingale in the sycamore. That's Underwoods by Robert Louis Stevenson. Thank you very much.
A nice little pitch,
Dwayne.
and I'm going to get a final wrap here. Roy, I see you as a very loyal friend, a devoted husband, father, grandfather, a very responsible citizen in your community, and a very faithful member of your church. I see you as one who respects and cares for this awesome creation. I see you as a kind of a Renaissance man, helpful in opening doors to others in order that they can expand their own knowledge and awareness of what's going on. And I see you as a very caring and compassionate human being. It's been my privilege to know you and to travel with you a good many miles over these past 40 years. Thanks for the chance to be part of the interview. Good, Roy.
Thanks.
River Roy.
You're a Renaissance man yourself. These are a couple of cards that my grandparents got for doing well in school. This is my brother and I as young kids there in Mankato. And the military experiences. This is me with an orphan boy that I took in. We took army clothes, cut them down so the kids could wear them. Gave them food. They would shine our boots, you know, and pick up for us. And these are some medals that I got from the Korean service. Here is a wedding picture of Bobby got married in Pennsylvania. Steve, our youngest son, lives in Berkeley, California. He's single and has his own house there. And here he is. We stayed in a sod house at Sanborn, Minnesota. You'd enjoy that, Julie. And the seagrass on the roof, and they even had an outhouse that was a sod house. Here's a tree house in the backyard. Our kids, Bobby heard a crash one day and it fell to the ground. And, here's a canoe on top of the car. Been a lot of miles carrying canoes around. And this is Renee, the girl that lived with us, who's going to have a baby any day now. And this is Melissa, who lived with us 4 years, and she lives in Florida and is married. These are some pictures of the Hovens on different trips that we took. This one's on the North Shore, and this is Zion Park, and this is Chester Woods County Park, and outside of Rochester. And when I went to Europe in '54, this was not a very good picture of membership in American Youth Hostels. And we went camping in Wisconsin with our whole family there in Warrens, Wisconsin, the Jellystone Park. This is the directory of a church, First English Lutheran. That's this plaque that my teacher gave me for service there. And there's a little neighbor girl that I've taken an interest in, and the family lives in the Habitat House just a block away. Her name is Karina Juarez. And this is a book I wrote about the trip to Alaska. And these are different flags from countries we served in, the VOSH, Volunteer Optometric Service to Humanity. And this is a certificate for Senior Citizen of the Year in 2008 from Rice County. And Artis Liebenstein was honored at the same time, so that was fun. And this is the book that I wrote in '97. This is our son David and his family, and Eric, oldest son, and his family from Wisconsin.